in any case, yeah, like I said, this is the Kitsap Sun Editorial Board, and you're Ken Thomas running for, I mean, it is re-election for the position one. You're an interim on that.
Yeah, technically I looked that up, so I can't say re-elect.
Okay, you are running for elect.
I can say retain or keep in office, but I can't, legally I'm not allowed to say re-elect.
Okay. We are not re-electing you, then we are. Yeah. You are running for position one, where you currently sit as the interim council member.
Since I was appointed in February.
Sounds good. Well, Ken, how we get started is why don't you just take 2 minutes to kind of tell us about yourself, tell us where you came from, and particularly maybe why you applied for the first time and why you'd want to run for a full term.
Yeah. A lot of people ask me that. My background is I'm a retired naval officer. So like a lot of people in Poulsbo, a lot of people in Kitsap, I spent a lot of my life serving in the Navy. And that was actually the first time I ever saw Poulsbo was in 1986. I was had an assignment over to, they called it the Bangor Submarine Base then. And I remember, I just vividly, it's like you remember when you fall in love with somebody. I mean, I have this image of, I was riding with somebody, a guy that picked me up at the airport, and we drove through downtown Poulsbo, and I was just like, what a place. I've got to come back to this place. And so I have to date it to 1986. That's when I decided that I want to live in this community for the rest of my life. And it took me decades to pull that off, unfortunately, just the way things worked out. But that was my introduction to Poulsbo back then. And I served in the Navy, both active duty, reserves. I have an unusual career, but it all kind of links together. My background is operations, manufacturing, supervision, and then also training. So those are kind of, and those can kind of meld together. And I did that both in the Navy and as a civilian industry, and that's what I'm doing today is industrial training, actually. So
with Boeing.
With Boeing, yeah. And so I left active duty in the 90s and went to work for a company called Medtronic that makes pacemakers, implantable pacemakers, and I was a training manager there at a facility in Arizona. Then my late wife had a serious disease, and I took a position as a school teacher. So I did that for 10 years, and that was so I could spend more time with her, and it just worked out better for us as a family. She was a school teacher too. And so I did that for 10 years, and she passed away in 2009. My kids were all grown. I was living in a 4-bedroom house and all by myself, just me and my dog, and I realized, you know what, I think I could finally move to Poulsbo. You know, it was just one of those weird things that the timing was there, and I said, well, yeah, I think I'll do it. So in 2009, I bought a house in Poulsbo, one of the brand new houses up on Stendhal Ridge. And bought that. I was a part-time resident for 2 years, and then finally was able to sell my property and wind up all my affairs in Arizona, where I was living. And so I've been a permanent resident since then. I remarried. My wife joined me in Poulsbo, and immediately she wanted a different house. So we bought another home across town. Deer Run neighborhood, and it's right on the side of the hill by Rock Park, and so we've melded into the community, into the neighborhood pretty well there. So that's kind of my background. By the way, Rock Park, I like to mention that because when I first moved there, I was like, who's this guy Rob? R-A-A-B. Took me a while to figure out how people pronounce that, but I looked him up, and I think he's relevant because he's a beloved mayor of Poulsbo in the history of Poulsbo, and did a lot of things. And what it was nice for me to see that he wasn't born and raised in Poulsbo, and he didn't go to high school there. He moved to Poulsbo. Within 5 years, he was on the city council in Poulsbo, and went on to do great things for the community and be a mayor. Now, I have no desire to be mayor. I just want to be on the city council. But he's kind of an inspiration to me because I thought, well, if he could be on the city council within 5 years, I could do it. So,
Rock Park, is that the one that's way up on top of the hill?
Yeah, sure is. Used to be a missile site. Yeah, back when the Army used to have a Nike Zeus missile site. A lot of people don't know that. Anyway.
So tell me about what else from '09 to earlier this year when you did finally get on the city council, what else did you do to get yourself involved in the community?
Well,
what led, what walked up?
Yeah, not a lot. Here's the thing. I did a lot of things earlier in my life, and I was looking at retirement, so I wasn't real anxious to jump right into a lot of things. So I'm in the American Legion Post, and I go to St. Olaf's and try to be part of the community and do things with my neighbors. I go to the football games at North Kitsap High School. In the some of the organizations for veterans. That's really kind of been my focus. And when I was younger, I was heavily involved in Scouts, and was a Scout leader, and done a lot of different things. But most of my life, it's been kind of, my jobs were my service. You know, I was a school teacher, I was a naval officer, and those sort of things. So I felt like I've kind of paid my dues to the community and the country through the type of work that I engaged in, so I've done that.
Well, they saw something in you, the mayor did, to select you this winter.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us about what that experience has been like the last couple of months. What do you think, what have you learned, what are you interested in?
Yeah.
You know, what's at the top of your list of things
Okay.
that you enjoy doing as a councilman?
Well, years ago, when I was a young man, I was a city councilman. I was elected to the city council in the town where I grew up when I was 21. That's Goodyear, Arizona.
When you were 21?
Yeah, huh. And I was a college student working in an aerospace factory, and I served a 2-year term there. And Goodyear was very small. It was smaller than Poulsbo. It was about 5,000 people. Now it's 70,000, so it's grown quite a bit. And that was one of the things I learned from my time on the Goodyear Council was growth, development, how quickly it can overwhelm a community and just bust right in, you know. Forces outside the community's control can drive development no matter what the community wants or desires. That development's going to be upon you. So I learned a lot of lessons from that, even though I was a young guy, and I remember those. So when I saw an opening, Linda Barry-Murray had resigned, and her seat was open. The city council put out an announcement, and I had been interested in serving on the Port Commission or a city council or something, just because I had that background years ago, and I thought, I'm going to have time now, I'll be retired. But it turned out I started working again. Back in the training business over at Bangor last year. I was working for a Navy contractor there, and I'm going. So I'm a fairly busy guy, but I'm interested in serving the community, specifically because I think I know how a city runs, and I know all the nuts and bolts of a municipal government, and I'm willing to read the reports and sit there through all the committee hearings and listen to all the technical reports from the engineers and go through the budgets and so on. So I applied. There were about 4 or 5 of us that applied at the time, and I think that's what the city council saw in me, was that I had some experience. As a naval officer, I had experience running large organizations. I think the largest group I was ever in charge of had 400 people. So it was, you know, I think they saw that, and they had confidence in my ability. And really, that's what I see this election is sort of the voter confirmation of the city council's confidence that they had in me when they selected me to appoint me to that commission.
And what would you say kind of the experience has been like during those months? Either what you've learned or what you would tell a voter, hey, here's what I have.
Well, first of all, it's fast-paced. You really have to be on top of things, and there's a lot to it, and it's wide-ranging. Everything from parks to zoning to budgets and engineering, and it's a wide gamut of topics that you have to deal with. But because I had that previous experience, I just sort of relied on that, and so I haven't really been surprised by anything. Mostly, I've just been trying to get to know the details of Poulsbo municipality better, and there are people that help me with that. Even though I didn't grow up in Poulsbo, you know, there are people. I go to people like Wally Owen, you know, who works, he volunteers at the Historical Society, and he's kind of my go-to guy. I go to him when I have a question about, hey, tell me the history of this thing, or what's the story behind this? So people will help me quite a bit in terms of getting the backstory of something that happened 20, 30 years ago that I may not know about. And so that's been pretty helpful.
Did you run as in a district in Poulsbo?
No, Poulsbo, you run for the seat or the position itself. So you don't represent a particular geographic district. No.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's all the city councils. Right. This election, there's 4 seats up, and mine's the only one that's contested.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the other incumbents are running without any points. So I take that as a good sign for the most part. That means that most citizens feel that the city council's doing what it should do. There's not a lot of people jumping up to oppose the city council. So, but as a new guy, I think it's natural that if somebody was going to run, they would pick the position that I'm filling.
Well, how would you describe the relationship between the city council and the mayor?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question, because I didn't really know any of them really. I mean, I was familiar with them, but I find them all to be very cordial people. Everybody pretty much puts the city first. We, as a group, don't all agree with each other. Sometimes we don't all agree with the mayor, but we find ways to work together. And when there is a disagreement, we'll take the vote, majority rules, and no hard feelings, and we move on and deal with the next issue. I mean, we just recently did that. The city council voted to raise the council member salaries, and 2 of us voted against that. But
did you vote against it?
Yes, I did. And Gary Neistel was the other council member that voted against it. So I think we had slightly different reasons why we voted against it. But anyway, but you know, no hard feelings. It's like, well, it's majority rules. That's how America works, and we try to find consensus. We try to find agreement. We try to understand each other's point of view. I think recently the Marine Science Center is another issue that there's been a little bit of disagreement among the mayor and the council on that one. And you know, I try to understand the mayor's point of view, my fellow council members' point of view, and try to take that all into account. But I'm not the only one. I have a good feeling about all the current council members. I think that everybody goes out of their way to find consensus to try and understand the other positions.
On any council kind of elected group, you know, you want a kind of a broad range of opinions, because that's truly representative of the city.
Right.
Where do you fit on the current council, or what do you think you've brought to that group?
Yeah, I think one of the things I represent is I see Poulsbo as a city that's got people that, like me, have moved there later in life or at some point in their life. They weren't born or raised there. Navy families, people that came there through job assignments or whatever, and they may not have the deep roots in that particular local community, but they're part of the community, and they live there, and their life counts, and I think it's important to represent that. I also think just the fact that I'm coming in with some prior experience as a municipal council member. We've actually got another council member that was a city council member elsewhere. So there's 2 of us actually on the council that bring in a different perspective into the whole municipal policy making business. So I think that's one of the things I bring to the table.
When you look at, you know, the possibility of doing this for the next 4 years, other than kind of what you've explained to us already, and just using your experience and understanding and learning more about the city, are there any things that come to your mind on, boy, I'd really like to see some attention on this?
Yes.
What's at the top of your priority list there?
Well, first I have to preface that overall, I want a smoothly functioning city government. I mean, and that sounds boring, but that is a goal in itself, I think. You want a city council that's not going to have gears that don't mesh. You don't want one that's going to have all kinds of conflict. And I want a smoothly running city government, and one that's efficient and effective. So that's my #1 goal. I think I can help make that happen. So far I have. But some other things, my next, a really big priority is the safety and security of neighborhoods and schools. And one of the things I've done so far is I was one of the city council members that really pushed for the placement of the school resource officer at North Kitsap High School, and we also share them with Kingston High School. But that took some work. So along with the mayor and a few of the other city council members, we were able to work with Police Chief Townsend and the budget, and it was mid-budget cycle. There was nothing set up for this. So we had to shift some money around and decide we're going to put this off and move this person here, and we were able to find a way to come up with the money to do that.
So you felt like this was something the city should do, I mean, rather than the school board or the school?
Well, it's a joint. It's a jointly funded position.
Oh, okay.
He is a police officer, which is part of the city police force, and yet he spends the school day at the school.
Okay.
And again, one of the things I didn't bring it up earlier, is I was a school teacher in a high school, and we had a school resource officer, and so I have personal experience with how effective that is. That really makes a huge difference.
Along those lines, one thing that we had reported on in the paper over the last year was Chief Townsend's interest in the parks, especially some of they were seeing some finding
Yes.
needles, some drug use in the parks, and
Right.
trying to really address that.
Right.
How do you think the city has done at that issue?
Yeah, and that was actually before I was appointed.
Yes.
It really got my attention. I went down to the city council for that meeting because I had a bit of interest in that. And actually, I think they're doing a pretty good job. Here's the problem is Poulsbo's a small city, and there's all these big forces throughout Washington, throughout Kitsap County, and they kind of impinge on Poulsbo. So even though we may not want them in our area, they kind of roll in. And drugs are one of them, and that's a problem, especially the use of heroin. And so, so I got real educated on how that's working. Our police department works very well with the various task force and the countywide task force, state task force, and so we're part of a bigger team to fight that. But a lot of the crime is drug based, and so that's important for City of Poulsbo to get a handle on. I think that we're keeping up with it, but it's a worry, and it's something we have to stay on top of. It really does concern me.
So you said you came here and you were retired, and this is where you wanted to retire, but then you went back to work. So are you working full time?
I am now. Yeah, I didn't expect to do that.
Why did you go back to work?
A couple of reasons. One is, well, the paycheck's always nice, but sort of through networking, I have some talents. And last year, because I was previously a naval officer with a background in shipbuilding, ship repair, training, I was contacted and basically said, "Man, we really need you for this program." So I work for a Navy training program, and it's called NAPS, and Naval Float Maintenance Training Strategy. And so I was the Pacific Northwest Regional Coordinator, so I worked over Everett and a little bit here in Bremerton, but mostly at IMF in Bangor. And once I went back to work, then it was like, well, this isn't too bad. And I realized that I still had some talents, I still had some knowledge that I could help. And so the project I have with Boeing is actually, it's a workforce development program that I'm working on now. So I'm helping, Boeing's basically providing me to a task force, and we're designing a statewide curriculum called Core Plus, and it's a 2-year program for career technical education for high school students. And again, that ties in my background in industrial training and being a high school teacher. And so I just feel like, well, I have some expertise in that. I have something I can help with, and so I don't mind doing it. I love the job. The commute, I got to tell you, I don't like the commute. I've learned a lot from this commute.
Mm. So. Do you think that that's going to impact your ability to be
No, it did at first, because I initially thought I was going to be retired to be, but several other city council members work full-time, and I just have to plan carefully, that's all. I have the ability to adjust my work schedule, and that's what I do every Wednesday. I leave work early and make sure I catch the ferry and get back in time for the finance committee meeting, the public safety committee meeting, the parks committee meeting, then the full city council, and do that week after week, and then I just have to make up that time elsewhere in the week. So I just have to be smart.
You mentioned the problem of opiates, use of opiates.
Yes.
Would you support a methadone maintenance clinic in Poulsbo?
Oh, that's a tough one. I know that's one of the strategies that has worked. I would, on one of those, I'd have to listen to expert opinion before I could really say. I don't have I mean, I think that's one of the things I'm willing to listen to people that are experts in the field before I cast a vote or decide. And I just feel like I don't have enough knowledge to be able to decide on that one.
You said something about concern about development. And that you saw that in
Yes.
Arizona. What
Right.
about in Poulsbo, and how does that affect you?
Yeah, I know people that have lived their whole lives, it seems like it's already overdeveloped. It's just a matter of comparing the way it was, and that's a natural reaction. But the reality is you know, growth is happening here in Washington, Kitsap County, and I know various forecasters that look at population demographics are looking at where the growth is really going to be in Kitsap County. I know that Bremerton feels it's going to be more down in this area. I think Poulsbo feels like it's going to be a little more to the north. But growth is happening, and we can either stay inside our small city boundaries and let the growth happen around us, or try and take a look at the area around Poulsbo, include it within our growth management boundaries. Not necessarily annex it, but have it within our growth management boundaries. And that way we're on top of what's happening around the city, and steer the development. Development's going to happen whether you want it to or not. It's a matter of being smart about it.
Yeah, one of the ways that you guys see in Poulsbo, a lot of that growth is that traffic running to Bainbridge Island and running to Seattle Ferry. A lot of those commuters. Right. You're one of these people.
Yes.
What's your opinion of how Kitsap Transit has been handling this? They have the double-decker buses ideas, some of these things that they're trying to do to alleviate a little bit of that traffic on the road.
Right. I think
what's your opinion of that, and what should the city, could they do more?
Yeah, it's a tough one because we're a corridor, and we feed right across Agate Pass Bridge, right into Bainbridge Island, and that road's busy. We've got I think Kitsap Transit's doing a pretty good job. We're putting a new center up there in Poulsbo. We broke ground for that, and that's going to help quite a bit. We've got a good mix of buses, I think. So I think they're doing well. The hardest thing is there are people like me that from day to day, we're not necessarily going from point A to point B every single day. So there has to be more flexibility, and that's the hard part. And trying to figure out how to make that happen. More van pools. We already have the HOV lanes on the highway there, and man, sometimes I wonder if we need more, but it's sort of, you have to build the highway, and that's a state highway, not a city road, but you have to build the highway so that it accommodates the peak traffic, but then the rest of the time it looks half empty, so it's a hard thing. But I think we're on the right track. I have no complaints about Kitsap Transit and what they're doing. I like the double-decker buses. I know some people have strange opinions about that, but I think it's the way to go.
One of the places